Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. This is a show where we answer your technical media production questions 7 days a week. Courtney, let's dive right in.
All right. First question comes in from Funsak Dorji, and he says, "Hi, panelists. I'm looking for suggestions on a screen graphics solution for live streaming a local assembly meeting, preferably not subscription-based. They currently use Here to Record or H2R graphics. Thanks."
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you need that isn't done with H2R, but SPX would probably be the next one that I'd probably look at. SPX does the graphics that you see on this show, and it's very flexible. And Tuomo is a part of our community here. So if you look for him in Discord, you should probably be able to get a hold of him. But SPX graphics is probably the next one we would look at after using H2R.
Next question.
Next question comes in from Alec Peterson in Cape Town, South Africa. Alex says, "Started using Atem Mini Extreme ISO. I'd like to know the difference between upstream and downstream key, and when do I use one or the other in production? I use LT and logos."
Alex?
I'm assuming that what you say is lower thirds and logos. Typically, those would sit in your downstream key. So here's the issue is that you can only have so many buses inside of a switcher. I mean, that all of that requires circuitry and processing to have these multiple buses. And so you want to be able to drop some of the graphics into those buses so that you don't have to manage them as they go through. When you have something that can be removed, it's staying in its own bus. So an upstream key is part of the video bus, so it gets composited with the video bus, but it is there. It's there, like it's burned into your video. Whereas a downstream key is sitting separate, so it's going out as the program, but it is on a separate layer that still can be removed. And why that's important is that you can do what's called a clean feed. So you have what we call a dirty feed and a clean feed. The dirty feed has all the graphics that you want, your logos, your lower thirds, all the other things that you may have there that are floating over top of your video. By sending out a clean feed, if you make a mistake, like misspell it or call Mark address and Mark Benioff, not that that's ever happened to me. If you do that with a lower third, it means if you did it without the downstream key, without a clean plate, you're stuck with it. It's really embarrassing. If you do it with a downstream. If you do it with a downstream key with a clean, you'll still have a nice clean version that you can go back and fix. This is also really good for social media. A lot of times they don't want all the lower thirds and all the bugs and everything else. They want to cut that into a short, and so the clean feed becomes very important. And so typically it's the downstream key is any graphic that you might want to take away, and the upstream key is typically something that's going to be burned into the video. The upstream key also has a lot of other features. So when you look at a Blackmagic upstream key, your super sources, your DVEs, all the things that you really couldn't put on a separate layer, those are all considered upstream keys as well.
Chris?
I think that includes the chroma key, correct, Alex? You can't chroma key in a DSK?
There is I think. Can you? Yeah, no, I think you can Luma key in the DSK, but you can't chroma key.
And so, just to be clear, what Alex was saying there is that if you choose to record, I'd say I don't know that you mentioned that. If you choose to record the clean feed, also,
which you should,
you should
for any event that matters.
If you can, I mean, you'd be surprised the things I used to do with.
You should record the clean feed
with one recorder, multiple cameras, live to tape, very complicated shows. And there were mistakes. There were mistakes. Yeah, so you have to choose to record that also. And I'm sure there's something in the book.
Should choose to record the clean feed. Saved us so many times. It's lots of little things. It's, you shoot this amazing event and it had a bug in the corner, or you shoot an amazing event and it's got lower thirds that weren't as good as they could have been, or you just don't want them because you want that segment you put out on social media. Also, clean feeds are used so that you can send, when you think about these lower thirds and bugs, a lot of times we'll send lower thirds, a clean feed out to press. So we have our own stream, and we're cutting the cameras, but we're providing that show out to the press, but without all the lower thirds and the bugs and everything else, so they can put their own bugs on it and their own lower thirds, and they can make it look like their own. And so clean feeds are used a lot. And so learning how to use them is super useful.
It just occurred to me, Alex, I think we should normalize the concept of taking a 16:9 frame And just like we used to do when we were transitioning from 4:3 to 16:9, and people would shoot safe, they'd just like center cut everything. Like, I think we should normalize all graphics to fit in a square frame in the center of the 16:9, so that way people can use it for square 1:1, 9:16, 16:9.
It looks so
we should
dorky.
just normalize that.
It would just look so dorky. Little lower thirds in the center like this that would fit into
I think
9:16.
It's the solution. It is the thing that the
or you could just have
future
clean
needs.
feed. You have clean feed.
I think we got a title for this show. Guy, let's go to our next question.
Next question's coming in from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada, and he asks, I have a Canopus ADVC 110 Firewire video interface. It has never needed drivers or specific software. It works with QuickTime. Do we think it will work with the Thunderbolt to Firewire adapter? It's for a legacy video system with a new Mac.
Alex.
I don't know if it will work with USB 3 or and above. So I think that I've had trouble with a lot of those Firewire adapters. You know, the way I solve this is I have an old computer that I use to grab stuff, and it has a Firewire. It has a Thunderbolt 1. It's either, I think Thunderbolt 1 to Firewire. I don't even have one old enough to do Firewire to Firewire, but I have one that's Thunderbolt to Firewire, and that has worked. But I couldn't get it to work with the USB 3 or USB-C, I guess, is what I had trouble with. There's a USB-C to USB to Thunderbolt. There's a Thunderbolt or USB-C to Thunderbolt 2, and then you have another converter to get to the. That didn't work for me.
Okay, and Courtney.
Yes, I have those Canopus ADVC 110s. They are wonderful things. Firewire 400. I don't know if they're going to work with a USB because it uses a different type of asynchronous protocol than Firewire does. So I'm not sure if it will work with that. The other problem is that you need the DVC codecs, and I don't know if the latest version of QuickTime 10.1 or 10.5, whatever they're up to, still has those codecs built in. So you might have to root around and try and load, if you can, QuickTime 7 version, the last version of 7 that you can, that had those DVC codecs built in, even if you do get the adapter to work. So you may have to drop back to an earlier version of QuickTime to find the codecs for that ADVC.
And Guy.
Yeah, the last time I did this was on my 2019 iMac, and I needed this adapter that you could find on eBay because they don't make them anymore. It's the Thunderbolt 2 to Firewire 800, but you also need a Thunderbolt 3 to Thunderbolt 2 adapter. And then depending on if you have Firewire 800 or 400, you're going to need that adapter as well. So you're going to have like 3 things in a row. What I found is I wound up just getting a Sony deck that had SDI, and then taking that SDI. So I had a bunch of mini DV tapes and got this deck that had SDI out, and then I captured it with a Blackmagic card. So just depending on what you want to do. And the benefit of that was I was able to stick a scaler because I was converting standard def up to HD. So I was able to do everything all in one. So depending on what that video needs to do, there's a couple. So it's the DSR 1500A with the SDI option. It would be a good board if you can find one of those if you are digitizing old tapes.
Well, I was reading up about this morning because I know for years Apple has warned developers we're going to be removing Firewire support. So it looks like, and Craig, you didn't mention what operating system you're running, but it looks like Tahoe, the operating system that is just coming out now, that Firewire devices you can receive power when you connect the device, but data transfer doesn't work. So it looks like they finally removed support in Tahoe, but in Sequoia, which is last year's operating system and previous operating systems, it should still work. Alex?
Yeah, I would highly recommend before you go through all of this stuff is to go on eBay and buy a computer that has Firewire 800. It's just going to be easier. It's not going to be that much more expensive. It's going to be like $250, and it'll just pull it off, and then you'll have it. I think that you'll end up, especially if you incorporate time, like the thing that I think a lot of people don't incorporate into solutions that I incorporate every time is time. What is my hourly, and how much time is it going to take me to figure this out? And I put that into everything that I figure out in the world. I did that. My father was a lawyer, and so I asked him why He said he liked washing cars, but he still paid me to wash his car. And I asked him why, and he goes, "Because my hourly is a lot higher than yours." And he didn't do anything that he didn't have to. That was going to be something. He said that working on my car, like changing the oil, would be $2,000. And so he has somebody else do that for less. And so it got me very much thinking about time as a kid. And so when I look at everything, I pay attention to how long it's going to take me. And this process of figuring this out, in my eyes, would take 8 to 10 hours between the ordering and the plugging in and the swearing and all the other things that are going to be involved with this process. And I just wouldn't do it. I just buy an old computer that had a Firewire 800.
And Craig, just an offer, but I got 2 old cheese grater Mac Pros collecting dust. So if you want one that has Firewire 400 and 800, which is fancy, I can ship it to you.
I have a cheese grater too. I don't even know if it'll turn on, but I should go get it.
It's right there. They're stacked right there. Look how beautiful they look.
I got to put one in my wall of depreciation. It's in the other wall of very depreciated. So there's the wall of depreciation that's active depreciated. The other one's fully depreciated. So I should go grab it from the fully depreciated. I think I have ET's hands over there too. I should bring them over. That'd be fun.
If you'd like to ask questions on this show for the panel, you can do that right now live. You can use Makana, our Q&A system, and post those questions, vote on those questions, and also chat with us live, which a lot of people are doing right now. If you've never done that, what you need to do is go to officehours.global/join, put in your email, and we'll send you the newsletter, and you'll have links to that. Of course, you'll also find links to our Discord community and all the other stuff on how to participate. Let's go to the next question.
Next one in from Scott Tupper in Livermore, California asks, other than Task Manager, is there monitoring software for Windows similar to iStat menus found on the Mac?
Alex.
I put my hand up because Courtney hadn't. I'm just going to then just go whatever he says.
Let's go to Courtney.
Well, I'm not sure what iStat menus does on the Mac.
iStat menu basically gives you all of the computer activity. So drive bandwidth, GPU usage, CPU usage, temperature, internet transfer, all those things. iStat, it's for a lot of Mac users, the first thing you do is you install iStat menu onto your new computer so that you can look up at the top of your bar and just see all everything that your computer's doing.
Right. Okay. So on Windows, I use 2 different programs. I use Task Manager for monitoring all the software and what everything's using, what's consuming all your cycles, memory usage, disk usage, under the Performance tab. That works well. It's been built into Windows since forever. For monitoring the hardware, though, if you want to go deeper than just what the software is doing on your machine, I use a HW monitor from CPU ID. Looks like this, and you can monitor. This lets you monitor all the temperatures of all the cores in your PC, so you can expand all these out. It shows you on all the Intel-based machines, all the cores can run at different frequencies. So it shows you how many cores you're using, what frequencies they're running at, what their highest frequency is, what their lowest frequency has been, and what the clocks are. A lot of information down here, all about the hardware. So it gives you the performance ratings down here, utilization. So there's some utilization, but this is all about the hardware, but not necessarily about any of the software that may be running on your PC. So the combination of those 2 probably covers everything that iStat gives you in the one dashboard.
Let's go to the next question.
David Brady, New York City asks, using a Mac Studio in a built-in NDI-based studio, HDMI out is going to a KVM and production output is going out NDI via hardware encoders. Is this sound, or should the NDI conversion be done on computer via something like Sienna Scan Converter?
Chris. You're muted, Chris.
Sorry about that. David, I'm going to answer sort of an adjacent question, and Alex will give you the real answer. But this is something that I learned, and I'm giving you like the dumb guy answer. So I take in my edit system, I take my main edit computer that is like a 5K display, and I also pull it off as a mirrored monitor. And the OS allows me to scale that one display to 2 different resolutions. And when I learned that, it opened up a whole world of possibilities. So That's might be part of your answer, and then Alex will answer the NDI portion of it.
Alex?
I don't think you need to. I don't think that you need anything else. If it's showing up properly on the other side, it should be able to send NDI as one of the. It's going out NDI via a hardware encoder. I think I'm also having. I'm curious as to what you mean by that, and whether you're spitting into a hardware encoder that is then turning it into NDI. In that case, shouldn't need to be any conversion. If you're trying to, but you should be able to send NDI without a hardware encoder out of the computer. You should be able to say that this is an NDI output. Of course, it depends on what you're supporting. So if it's just like I want to be able to grab any desktop possible, then it may be more stable to use a piece of hardware, because then the computer is not trying to figure it out and you're not using any CPU overage. It just goes, oh, that's a monitor. So I guess that's my question. If you are, in general, I try to keep, if you're using it as a screen grab or some kind of screen scrape of the entire computer, then I would probably use an external hardware device. And the reason for that is that having anything use the software to grab the screen will reduce the performance of the computer. And so anytime you use a screen capture software, whether it's ScreenFlow or Camtasia or anything else, or any of these services that grab onto the screen, you are going to reduce frame rate. We see it all the time. People are like, well, I can use this, or I can use QuickTime, or I can use many other things. Is it noticeable for the average person? No. But if you want every frame, 30 frames a second or 60 frames a second, every frame to come out of it, you should not have any software grabbing onto the screen while it's working.
And David, if you have any follow-up information that you can share that'll help us as well, you can always feel free to post that question as well. Let's go to the next one for now.
Jacob Goodnight, Indianapolis, Indiana, asks, why do so many major broadcasters still screen scrape with all the ISO tools and Zoom integrations available today? Example, NBC yesterday didn't even make full screen, and he's got a YouTube link.
Alex?
Because they did it a long time ago and they don't have the budget or the attention span to change it. I'd love to give you some kind of really high-end solution, but they don't. Most of these were done during COVID. Vast majorities were done. So before that, anybody who was serious about it before COVID was using Skype TX. I used to have 6 of those boxes. I think I still have one in my wall of appreciation somewhere. So the Skype TX boxes I had the ones that there was a 4000 that had 4 outs and ins, and it was very cool. And you could use those to dump people into, to bring people in. Anybody else, everybody else was screen scraping. Like everybody else was screen scraping, and so the neural net, I guess, was the other one that people were using, which is now Zoom based, I believe. So neural net has kind of upgraded to that, and it's kind of like the really high end version of that kind of thing. But then during COVID, of course, Liminal built a bunch of tools that are way better, but it didn't roll out. Before they were bought by Zoom, they were known by theater folks and by us. They weren't known by broadcasters as well. And so the broadcasters in a panic during COVID built all these ways to screen scrape and like grab onto it. And before Zoom and before Skype TX, I screen scraped 1,200 shows. So I get the, you can do it that way, but it is a very low quality way to grab onto the videos, and so it's just what they could do at the moment to do that. And especially for broadcasters who don't care. Some people screen scrape because all the other platforms, Teams and WebEx and Meet, all are kind of, they don't give you any options to have a real video signal, so they're, because they're not grown up, VC things. I get that they make you use them, but they're not particularly production ready solutions. And so Zoom, by focusing heavily on being able to give us those production solutions in ZoomISO, it's better frames, it's more frames, it's lower CPU usage. All of those things are available, and you have one computer that can output 8 ISOs instead of a screen scrape. But I would say that it all funnels down to no one has given them a hard time. And now that you've given me a YouTube link, I'm getting ready to start yet another OH channel that is just me making fun of people who don't do it very well. I'll sometimes talk about good things too. But if you look back at the old Pixel Core things where I did the teardown, OH teardown is coming. And I've been building up all this content in my little thing, and I'm just about ready to unleash it. And now I'm going to use this one as one of them.
And one other thing, Alex.
By the way, Chris, shame and ridicule.
I can't wait. This is going to be the best thing on YouTube.
If you go back and look at the old teardowns, you'll see me. And I talk about things that are working too, but I definitely will take these guys to task.
And Alex, have you noticed that the color is also better? Because I feel like that was also improved.
Yeah, 100%.
And Chris, let's go to you.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. What this illustrates is how localized most people's knowledge is. Like, you know what you know, and the people around you, we do it this way, and there's not enough cross-pollination, sorry, tough word to say, cross-pollination between different factions of people. So like Alex mentioned that, liminal came out of theater. And so we were blessed by the fact that, it was Grant who logged on that one morning and goes, guys, have you seen this thing? It's crazy. You can pull feeds out of
I
a
just
Zoom.
wish we had recorded it.
And Andy was like, yeah, that's me.
Well, the funny part is Grant is showing it to us, and Andy, there was a thing that Grant was having trouble with, and this has been a story that's told 1,000 times. It's part of OH lore, is that Grant happens to be just showing us how to use this new liminal app that he thought was really cool, and and Andy just happened to show up because there was a bunch of people that had downloaded it from liminal that had said they saw it on our show, and so it was all just kind of happenstance. And Andy tried to give him some the most famous quote one of the most famous quotes in office hours is Andy giving Grant advice on how to use liminal, how to use ISO, and Grant saying, hey, this is my first rodeo. It's part of OH lore.
But the other thing is that broadcasters are notoriously stubborn, super stubborn. No, don't come to me with your little AV knowledge. I don't need you. I'm totally good. I was remembering a show that I did many years ago where I was building a bunch of lower thirds in Photoshop, and the woman who was cutting the piece was cutting it at the local Channel 2 KTVU here in the Bay Area, and I had to go deliver a bunch of I think it was pre-PNG, so whatever we did before PNG, and their editor was like, what are you this is not, you can't, yeah, maybe it was, I can't remember. You can't do this on a computer. And I'm like, oh, you're not long for this career. You have no idea what you're talking about. And, but I delivered 120 Targa files or whatever they were. And the editor was like, oh, I guess this will work. Yeah, And, but broadcasters are super stubborn. It doesn't surprise me at all that you can pull, especially if they're like my age, 50 or older. They're still, holding on to things they learned in the 70s.
Okay, and Courtney.
Yeah, I took a look at this, and this happens. This is NBC, the Today Show. They have enough hardware to do, SDI outputs, and they don't have to do screen scraping. But I tell you, because they do, hundreds of remotes a day. But the problem with live television, which the Today Show is a lot of times you'll have everything set up for guests, and you got all your buses occupied for the upcoming guests, and they're all set up and teched. And then somebody says, "Oh, we got the cast from that new movie. They're doing a junket down at the such and such hotel, and they can call in, and we can do a hit piece on them. And we just had this other people drop out, And so the people, if you look at the picture here, these people are obviously sitting in a hotel room somewhere in some film junket, they just had a Mac, and somebody says, "Well, here." We can just bring them in on Zoom Workplace. They don't have the right software on their machine to do this hit from the remote. So they're using Zoom Workplace. And they just called in and somebody plugged their Mac in and did a screen scrape to get it in so they wouldn't disturb the setup on everything else. So I just think they were set up for something else, and at the last minute, things I've worked on live television for NBC and CBS, and trust me, on those live 2-hour shows, the rundown changes a lot during the show, strangely enough. So this was like maybe a last minute.
There's only one button that
They could have gone.
They could have just hit the green dot. If they had hit the green dot, it would have been better.
Yeah,
So simple.
That's because
And
the
Chris, when I do the
technical director
teardown,
didn't
I'm
know
gonna-
how to. This was somebody offering a solution at the last minute that the technical director didn't know anything. And they forgot
Alex,
to hit
I'm
the
gonna,
magic button.
I'm gonna go to you, but I'm just gonna say for just a quick second, I'm gonna break tradition that all Canadians are polite. Is it possible? I'm not saying in all these situations there's special circumstances. Is it possible that they just got somebody that doesn't know what they're doing?
It's not that they don't know what they're doing. So here's the mistake, people. I just want to be fair here. I'm sure that the person doing this works at the station and knows a lot about what they're doing. They just don't know how to do this. And I think that the mistake people make, so that we have to always, the thing that gets people is not that they don't know what they're doing. It's that they know a lot about what they're doing in one vertical, and they just don't know this vertical. But they take, well, I know a lot about this. I will know a lot about this, and sometimes that's not transferable. It's one of the real powers of what we have here at Office Hours is there's this crazy, like, we're trading notes all the time, and people are doing virtual events and remote participants, and and we get to talk to the people who wrote the software for Zoom, to when things aren't working, and they come on our show. So our knowledge of this is luxurious compared to most people who are working at a broadcast studio who, again, have been there for 30 or 40 years, can probably terminate an SDI cable in 10 seconds, terminate fiber, DX some kind of workflow very, very quickly, build rigs that they can go out. They're very talented and very smart. They just don't know this vertical, and they don't, and this has happened very quickly. And again, it got to a point where it happened under duress, and then it just kind of stuck. This is what happens all the time: is people build production solutions, and then it just sticks because it's working. And they're like, okay, that's now in a box that says no one's complaining about it, so we're just going to leave it there. And and I think that the thing that's probably there's no, let's not fix the things that people aren't complaining about, because people are complaining about these other 6 things, and it's always some other 6 things that people are complaining about, and this one seems to be stable. And my guess is someone just forgot. We had one show where, someone didn't do that little, push that little button, and it had the Hangout link to the show and you think, I saw it, it's a really long thing, and I like, oh no. And I was like, but no one's going to notice. Hundreds of people noticed. And we're willing to carefully type, a 60 character string to get into the show. It's bad. It's a bad day.
All right, Chris, you wanted to wrap this up?
Wrap it up. The summary is some people have a lot of depth of knowledge, but it helps to have breadth of knowledge too.
Yeah.
There you go. Let's move to the next question.
Got one in from David Brady in New York, asking, I am trying to reimagine how our team manages satellite media tours. Would it be possible to share or describe the way Office Hours onboards panelists and where they go within the Zoom ecosphere at each step from join, tech check, and stage?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I just quickly through.
Oh, we lost you. We lost your audio. Oh, Guy, we lost your audio. I'm not sure what happened there. Can't hear you, Guy.
I could narrate what I think Guy is saying. No.
Oh, we can't hear you, Guy.
I think you're hardware muted somewhere.
Or
Gotcha. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, there you are.
So basically, the diagram was showing that there's a Zoom lobby that everybody comes into, and then there's a tech check breakout room. So the lobby gets people to come in. They get pushed over to this tech check where we go and do our mic checks, and then there's the stage, which we're in right now, which the stage is where we have the output to YouTube. So basically, that's all the. Alex can expand on it, but he calls it the Emerald City method. I made a graphic, but for some reason it's not cutting over it.
Yeah. So the way we do it for Office Hours is a little different than the way that 090 does it for satellite media tours, which we do. One of the things you want to think about is who can talk to each other, who's allowed to talk to each other in an SMT. So if you're bringing people in using doing some version of an SMT with individuals, typically the different stations, you don't necessarily want them to talk to each other. And for those watching, what a satellite media tour is typically you have an expert, and that expert is going to be available to you. There's companies that do this. They know all the news contacts for every radio station, or not every, well, sometimes radio stations and TV stations in the United States. So these are local. If you wonder in your little morning show, the pre-Good Morning America show that happens, there's local people who are looking for content. Like they just need someone to talk to them about the best new tech, or this is what's happening on Google, or this is what, and so you wonder, like, where do they get these guys? They're nationally known people. SMTs. That's where they get them. So what they do is you make these SMTs available. But what we do that's a little different is we give each one of the outlets their own box, or we have a certain number of live boxes. Because what happens with an SMT, for those watching, is that we're going from station to station to station to station to station to station. So we're just like literally you get an 8-minute hit, and there's like a 2-minute window, and then you do a 6-minute hit, and then you do a 2-minute window, and you have it all scheduled out. And so you have to be able to, and so what we found was easier was to create a series of boxes in small SMTs. So we do stuff for music where it's like all the music services, sort of like Pandora and Spotify and different organizations like that. We give them a Zoom link. When they get to the main window, we say, "Hey, how's it going? Where are you from?" And they say, "Oh, I'm from K2UV or whatever." And you pull them into a room that is theirs. So that room is theirs. Their room. They're there waiting. They don't see anything. Sometimes we put something in that they can see, but oftentimes they're sitting. We'll say, we'll jump in when we're ready for you. So they're there. Sometimes we'll give them a signal that will show them, something that they can see. And if we're okay with them seeing the previous version of the SMT, like the last station, sometimes the client will want to do that, and sometimes they won't. So we either give them a test signal so that they know that they see video, they can check their signals, they can make sure everything's working, or we show them another live feed of that signal. But they're there by themselves without anybody else in there, so that they can make sure that their input is correct and everything's working. But when we can't do that, oftentimes we'll take the person who, that's in the SMT, and we simply drag them from room to room. Like they just appear in the other, "Hey, how's it going?" Like they just suddenly appear in the room, and they see them, and they can, make sure that everything's working. But either we give them a test signal, or we give them, we do let them see the feed, and then we come to them. The advantage of letting them see the feed is they really get to check audio, check framing, check their super sources, all those other things if they're just seeing the live feed across it. But we give them their own rooms to do that, so that they're not stepping on each other. And that's one of the real powers of having Zoom is being able to build them all into that. Now, the Emerald City is really how we manage people when we're doing groups of we have other shows where we have to jump from a group of 5 to another group of 5 to another group of 5 to another group of 5. If we're like, let's say an award show, all the, back in the COVID days, it was all the winners would all be sitting in a thing together kind of thing. Or it's a round table. So we have a round table, and then a round table. In that case, what we do is we bring them in, we take them into, we never use the main window, and that's thanks to Grant, who we talked about earlier. Grant was like, "Oh, we just take people out of the main window," and so the main window is like the lobby, and we immediately move you to another room. So the first place is that we have kind of a holding pen that we've kind of put everybody in as we're pulling them out. Then we move them to hair and makeup, then to the green room. The hair and makeup is us checking to make sure all your lights and your internet and everything else is ready. And then we put you into the green room together, and you're all talking to people. One thing you forget is that one of the reasons people speak at events is so they can talk to the other speakers. And so by giving them a green room where they all get to sit around and chit chat, that's seen as a benefit for the speakers. And then we move them into the rooms that they need to be moved into. So there's a lot of architecture there that admittedly, it was a conversation with Grant that got my head going years ago, and we've turned it into, sometimes these events I'll have 8 to 12 rooms that are all being used to move people around and manage who sees what.
If you'd like to participate in the show and ask questions, there's another way that you can do that. It does not require any login. It's quick and fast. Go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. Get your question in, and we'll make sure we get into the show shortly. Let's move on to the next one.
Neil Avoletto in Boca Raton, Florida asks, any comments on TeamSpeak open source comm solution?
Alex.
I haven't used it recently, so I don't know if it's gotten any better, but we did a test, and the test was so messy, this was quite some time ago, that we just kind of wrote it off. so unless they've made some kind of major upgrade, it's an incredible amount of work and not a lot of output, so yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, I think that it's, we have, Jonas Dottel has space comms, which I would take a look at. It's pretty impressive. Unity is what we're using in the show right now. I think someday we'll move over to space comms as well. And with space comms, I'm much happier with Unity. It's kind of a love-hate relationship with it, but it's still a pretty viable thing, and we use it in a lot of different places. It's very limited, but I wouldn't go down below. I wouldn't go to something less expensive than those two. I think that you're going to find that as you go down below that for online stuff, you got to decide how important your event is, and will it actually work if it breaks down, or how much time do you actually want to spend?
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. And Zach asks, what are some pros and cons of using ZoomISO or a built-in Zoom function in vMix, Wirecast, or MimoLive? I'm building out a new Zoom hybrid system and looking at options.
All right, back to you, Guy.
Yeah, I would also add Zoom Room's custom AV into this mix, depending on what it is that you want to do, because there's some permissions involved. It depends on if you're using your own meeting, and you're always going to have your own meeting, because, say, for instance, with vMix, if you follow that Emerald City protocol, you cannot, when it says permission to move you to a breakout room, there is no way to actually say okay in vMix. So they haven't fixed that yet. So that's one downside. There's some ways that you can work around it with some permission things, but so that's a downside. Wirecast, you cannot do record permissions. You have to do live streaming permissions. So again, it's a permissions issue. MimoLive works pretty well. If you want to try these things, we have this 24/7 meeting that you can play with. But the downside is, it's a 1080p meeting, but it's our meeting. So if you want to do your own meeting, you might be stuck at 360p. So some of the pros and cons are that you may not have an account that gets you the full resolution. One other way with Zoom Room's custom AV is that you're paying $40 a month for the Zoom Room, but that will upgrade not only your meeting, but other people's meetings. So if you are coming into another meeting and they have a 360 account and you come in with a Zoom Room, it'll bump it to 720. So now you're at least getting HD. But yeah, if you can use your own account, I think the easiest way now is to get a Zoom Sessions year license with Zoom Events, and then you'll at least have a 1080p account. And that's kind of the key to all this, is unlocking that HD clarity. But yeah, I would ask a little more with what it is that you want to record and how you want to do it. Are you going into hardware? Because I did a session on the special show earlier in the week where I showed the entire workflow with the Atem, and it was pretty in-depth tutorial that walks you through how I do it. And it's hardware based, but it's super reliable. So I'd take a look at that as well. And that walks you through ZoomISO.
Alex?
Yeah, Mickey said that use Zoom Room custom AV for contribution ingest or a Zoom Room if you just need NDI. The experience is significantly better than ZoomISO or other application integrations. And I think that, I would definitely, if you're really building something out, the Zoom Room custom AV is probably something you definitely want to look at. It's a hardware appliance. It's going to do the thing you needed to do. I would say that I find that there's a convenience to using things like the built-in versions of these, but I think you don't get all the features that you would have with ZoomISO in any of those, any of the ones you listed. You don't get every feature that you would have in ZoomISO in those. They're kind of, and so for instance, when I'm doing things with some like the fireside chats and gray matter, I typically use ZoomISO because I'm doing other audio pipelines at the same time. So I have the video and the audio going into MimoLive, but I'm also doing audio records and I'm doing other things like that. And it was just easier for me to have ZoomISO be the thing that I'm using to route everything, as opposed to, and I don't need it enough to use the custom AV at home.
And Guy?
Yeah, and the other thing with custom AV is that you can push back 4. So you can pull in, even if you had 720p's, you could go unlimited. So it is just a regular computer running Zoom Rooms. So like me, I'll run it on a Mac Mini M4, and it's just Zoom Rooms, just plain vanilla Zoom Rooms. But then I have a deck link with a Sonnet box quad card connected to that Mac. And if I go over to a PC and run the custom AV software, now I can make any of those quad ports an in or an out. So I could have 4 people that I'm pulling down, and then I could push back in 4. So the reason why we do this is now we can send back not only a program return, but I could send back a tally light. I could send back prompter. I could send back PowerPoint. I could send back PowerPoint notes. So these things that you might need, that's when you start looking at other solutions. So Zach, your question's kind of it depends type thing. Depends on how deep you want to go. Because yeah, you could just go Zoom Rooms NDI and just call it a day. But yeah, it depends on what's your workflow. Are you trying to mix a show? How many people? All that.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Kyle Nesta in Philadelphia, and he asks, what's the minimum hardware-based setup and minimum software-based setup you would use to record ISO tracks of an online panel interview? Assume 1 host and 3 interviewees seeking isolated audio and video from each.
Alex?
I'd use a Mac Mini with ZoomISO is what I would use to pull those interviews. And then you have to decide when you say minimum, there's a lot of different ways that you could pull those ISOs. If you could send those, you could have a Sonnet box going SDI out, SDI back into a Atem Mini and Atem Mini Extreme ISO or whatever, or Atem ISO if it's only 4. But the Mac Mini with a Sonnet box will do 8. The Mac Mini M4 will do 8 out without too much trouble. And so you could get a quad card for that to go out. You can do NDI as well. You can also do, you could do something like MimoLive with 4 inputs, and you could theoretically use, when you're talking about ISO tracks, you could theoretically use Mimo to do it internally, and it would just pull all those ISOs with each audio track. I have a tendency when it matters when I'm doing these online panels is I have a tendency to want to drop into hardware pretty quickly just because I'm sensitive to frame loss. And anytime you use software, there's a lot of like back and forth of figuring out, am I really going to get every frame that I could have gotten if I had done it? And I find that ZoomISO is very, very stable when I use SDI. And when you start using other software, a lot of people will say it works. And I still see the frame drops. I can see these little frames getting dropped out. It's not purely 30 frames a second. It's never purely 30 frames a second out of ZoomISO, but I almost never see it being as clean as it could be when we're using a software-based solution.
Guy?
Yeah, exactly what Alex just said. That's the same exact setup that I have, and Omar Gadon has the same one down in LA, and we're doing these very high-profile records, and it's exactly that setup. It's a Mac running ZoomISO with a Sonnet box, and then we're recording to a USB-C drive that's been tried and true and tested, and it works every time. And we've done just dozens and dozens and dozens of these. And in fact, we have Katie Couric coming up in a couple days here. So, I mean, there's people that you only get them once. You don't want to mess this up. So when it matters, I would go with the solution that other people are using and that works. That's tried and true.
And Alex, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, and the hardware that we use is HyperDecks. So, and we use full 1U HyperDecks, and they've been pretty solid for us. I know there's some Mickey suggested AJ Key Pros. The Key Pros are a lot more expensive, and the media is a lot more expensive, and none of it pencils out for us for what we need. So that's why we've always stuck with the I used to own 8 Key Pro 4Ks, or 12Gs or whatever. It's not, and we had a variety of issues with them that had me kind of write them off. So but I would say that ZoomISO will let you also send all those videos out, but you can send, if you have Dante or other things, you can send all the audio out separately and record it all separately as well, which is kind of cool.
Let's move to the next question.
Next one's in from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York, and he asks, in a house of worship environment, could running hardline for cameras be preferable over NDI if the network max upload speed is 40 megabits per second, just looking at saving as much headroom as possible?
Alex.
With 40 megabits per second, I don't know how you'd run NDI with any more than a handful of cameras, and that'd be an HX. So I think that you absolutely need to go hardline. So you would need to go hard. You can't, if that's the limit of what you have, I would, now that you could build a separate network. When you're starting running hardlines, you could build a separate network for NDI if the cameras are already NDI. But if the cameras have SDI, I would just run it. So,
next question.
Next one's in from Tony Mobley in Noonan, and he's asked, Alex, as part of your work, will you need 2 iPhones, iPhone 17 Pro Max? Please share your use case.
Alex.
I do need 2, and I can't quite get into why I'm using 2 yet, but you'll hopefully see it next week. So I have 2. Yes, I have 2 2 iPhone 17 Pros, not the Max ones. It turns out for what I'm doing, the camera being smaller. I keep on calling the phone the camera, but the cameras need to be a little smaller. It makes it easier for me to do what I'm doing. So, but yeah, working on some interesting things. We'll show it more next week.
Alex, I seem to recall reading something about the Blackmagic camera app. You can remotely control another iPhone if you have a second phone with the Blackmagic camera.
I haven't tried that, and it would be interesting.
Sounds cool.
I'm going to have 2 17s for a while. We bought 2 for what I'm working on, and so I have 2 of them. So we'll look at all the interactions that you can do there.
Next question.
Got one in from Eduardo Augustine in Panama City asking, I've been using Upstream Key to add graphics to events, but using chroma has some complications with sports, green, blue, magenta. I include graphics with OBS and Keyit. Should I change the workflow to OBS and add the graphics at the end?
Alex.
So what I will say is I don't really push things that I care about through OBS. So OBS is something that I use for fun, but I'm not going to use that piece of software to do something that's going to be the end result. It can contribute to something, but I need to know that it can fail and I'm okay. So, that's the kind of, I know that a lot of people do use OBS, but, I don't want to try to explain it to a client I don't want to explain OBS to a client when it doesn't work, and I've had it not work enough that I wouldn't put it at the end of a pipeline. As far as how you key it, there's lots of different ways to deliver that. The chroma key is generally a lot of people will go that direction, but the problem with it is exactly what you're talking about. You have different colors, and the other issue is that it's typically through the switcher, it's a 4422 instead of 444 signal, which means that you have half the color resolution. Where you'll see that is along angled graphics or curves along your key, you'll see stair stepping. And that's because there's less data there for it to grab onto. And so you typically get that. And so what a lot of us have done in the short term, we'll talk about a couple different ways of doing this, but in the short term, one of the ways to solve this is to use LumaKey. And so you can use a LumaKey. This is the old school, is the LumaKey. And what we do is you can key the black. You can use LumaKey and the downstream key instead of upstream keys. And there's 2 little sliders there, and you can move them around and you'll be able to key black. What you do is you have all your backgrounds pure black, and then you bring your other blacks up just a little. In broadcast, it used to be 7%. I go more like 15%, and no one's going to notice. No one ever notices that the blacks are a little higher than they would normally be. So if you're thinking about 0 to 255, I'll bring them up to 20 or 30. There, so that my black, and I just pull in that output slider just a little bit, and that's going to bring it all up, and then it'll all key perfectly in your hardware switcher. And the more you pull it up, the less blacks you'll get. And, in graphics, the good news is a lot of graphics don't have a lot of pure blacks. They have dark areas, but they don't have pure blacks. And so we don't usually have too much trouble with it. It does take a little bit of finesse to get this to work perfectly, but I've used it for 30 years now, so in some way, shape, or form. Now, the other way that you can do it is you can take something that'll take if you're working with a hardware switcher, you can take something that is that takes the HTML5 and delivers it as key fill. And so there's Blue has a version of that. Softron has a graphics version of that, where it'll take a graphic. If it sees it'll see the alpha channel, and it'll deliver to you a key fill signal to your switcher. Just make sure that the one challenge you'll have is if you're using SDI, you'll be fine most likely. If you're using HDMI, you may have issues where it doesn't line up perfectly. Although we theoretically worry about that. We haven't had that actual problem. So usually the graphics work out fine in that environment. But that's what I would. I started with green screen as well, but we moved to LumaKey because it looked a lot better. The places that you'll have trouble with it is if you have a lot of transparency that you're trying to manage. You can get it out of LumaKey, but it really takes a lot of know-how and thought process. Motion blur and lots of soft edges become hard. That's where you really need a full key fill. But if you're doing relatively hard standard graphics, you may find that it works better than you think.
If you like this show, you'd like to show your support, there are numerous ways that you can do that. First of all, you can start by subscribing and liking the show on YouTube, share it with a friend. You can also become part of the community. There are lots of volunteer positions. This show is entirely run by volunteers, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a panelist position, but if you are interested in learning some new technical skills, you can go to officehours.global/volunteer and just check the boxes on the areas that you are interested in. You can also donate to the show by going to officehours.global/donate. Let's go to the next question.
Brian Taylor, Washington, D.C. asks, my iKan Mylo Bi-Color MSB8 lights don't show color temperature as a number. How do I best match them to mixed daylight incandescent light for a live event?
Guy, what do you think?
Well, he said best. So, I mean, if you're willing to drop a lot of money, you can get one of these $2,000 devices that'll give you the exact, this is called a spectrometer, and it's made by iKan, and it'll give you the exact number of those lights. Now, every space is going to be a little different. So if you don't have too much control, you might want to go with what the majority of what's coming in. So sometimes you might be able to overpower house lights, or you might be able to just ask them to turn them off. So it all just depends as to if you want to go through the trouble. Because even my nice aperture lights, the readout that it says that it is, when I test it with this, it's inaccurate. So even the best lights out there aren't completely accurate. So if you want to dial in something, you need to get one of these, but not everybody's going to get one of these. In a lot of cases, it's just going to be best effort. And, you can use with some cameras, the auto white balance, and then when you switch to manual, it'll have a number in there, but that's not on all makes and manufacturers of cameras. But yeah, spectrometer is the tool to use if you want to get stuff dialed in perfectly, especially if you're mixing and matching daylight. But remember, daylight moves over the day, so you might get 10,000 in the middle of the bright afternoon sun at midday, but then it goes down to 5,600 later on, and then even down to 3,000 later on.
Courtney?
Yeah, like I said, it's when especially if you're mixing daylight with tungsten, it depends on the percentage of each. So there's not a fixed number that's going to give you an answer that's going to correlate to a number that appears on a display on the back of the light. And that's just a guess anyway. Most of the light manufacturers just have 5,600 and 3,200. And then as you turn the knob, it just moves linearly between those two values. And it's not an actual readout of the color temperature or the balance of the voltage it's heading to each color LED. So turn the knob till it looks good and then walk away. That's the best way, especially if you're adding it to existing mixed tungsten and daylight. Make sure your auto white balance is turned off so that the camera's not adjusting as you adjust your light. So set it so it looks good without your additional iKan lights turned on, and then freeze the color temperature on the camera so that it won't change, and then turn on the iKan lights and turn the knob till it looks good and balances with the existing light in the room.
And Guy?
Yeah, this is where it's nice to also have a broadcast monitor that's color accurate, so you can see. And I like to go for skin tones. You know, if you have waveforms and scopes, and that way you can actually dial in and look at the flesh tone line and care about what people look like, because that's what matters at the end of the day. I'll let other stuff that's maybe they're wearing a white shirt, but now it goes a little pink, but the skin tone line's right on. I mean, something's off in the chain, but it could be just a little bit of pink light that's coming off some other stray light that you don't even see in your frame. So I like to have real tools, you know, and it's a luxury to have these tools, but when you have them, it makes a world of difference, because I've had people saying, hey, it looks a little blue. And I'm like, come here and look at my scopes and look at my broadcast monitor in this room. And now tell me that it looks off to you, because my monitor's, you know, $3,000 and you're looking at it on a laptop that's got True Tone on. You know, it's like, you're not, you can't say that my color's off when I have the tools that, you know, can dial it in and show you exactly precisely what it is.
Next question.
Next one's Eduardo Augustine in Panama City, and he asks, I always travel with all of my gear to outdoor events. A lot of work and time to move and prep and install. I don't own a truck or RV. Should I transition to REMI or plan on building a truck and stay in site?
Alex.
If you're going to outdoor events, and unless you really are ready to spend a lot of money on the returns, you're going to end up wanting to still do production on site. You know, the REMI is something that can be done, but you really have to. There's a lot of idiosyncrasies between you and the venue. So if the venue doesn't have great internet, you're going to depend on a live view or depend on something else. Now you're upstream and trying to explain that to clients. We just never found. We do REMI in some cases, but usually we're on really fast internet connected to everyone else. We're not dealing, and it's oftentimes private fiber and so on and so forth. We're not using total internet, you know, like random internet there. And so you want to have that production most likely there. So I don't think you're going to do that. I think a truck might make more sense. There's generally steps to this. Here's a couple pictures here. Like, you know, we started with very small things. You know, like these are things that are kind of, you know, like, you know, us just bringing in a couple lights and cameras. This is a fly kit. This was, you know, so this is something that we could pack up in a day and make go away. A couple monitors there to manage things. This is, you know, again, adjusting to things for shots. Here's us putting kits into trucks. So we had to go into the Sonoma Raceway here, and so it needed to be inside of something. So you can this is kind of a halfway in between process here. This is another kit. Now, this is where you start to get a little bit more organized. So what you can see here is that, you know, so these switchers, oddly enough, and some of the mixers will, you know, slide right into a 19-inch rack, not by accident. Like, they're built that way. And so, so you'll see that we have those, you know, those controls available to us, and you can see how we're using the lids here, to, you know, as tables, and so those are built into the kit. So these kits become the step beyond. I'm going to put a bunch of stuff together. Is typically building a fly kit that is relatively easy. Oftentimes we have big snakes that just go between each other. So here's a snake with all the connections that we need to connect this pack to that pack, and it's very quick to plug it in. Typically for us, other than running the cameras, most of our kits, the smaller kits that are, you know, less than 5 people, we can do, you know, getting these kits, building convenience panels on the back, building snakes that go between them. We should be able to be set up in 45 minutes, you know, like to have that all kind of ready to go and managed. So it sounds like you've already built some kits, but I would say that I would build them, and they are designed to knock out very quickly, and figure out what you're going to deliver them in as well. Because some of these kits, as they get bigger, you know, you stop being able to throw them in your car, and you need some kind of van with a ramp or with a lift gate or other things like that to get it in and out. And so you kind of grow into that. Going into a truck is great. You know, we see a lot of Sprinter trucks, you know, that people build into. It's going to save you a lot of setup time. It also means when the weather is inclement, you can manage it. It also means that you can have air conditioning, which is really important to me. So, so I don't really like hot and humid. So, so I really like to have that. Now, what we did is we bought a 24-foot toy hauler and converted it to, it came semi-converted, but built a toy hauler into a production studio, and it was super powerful. You know, like it definitely transformed what we could do on site, but it does then require a Ford 350 to pull it, and, you know, all the other fun stuff that comes with it.
Well, that wraps up our show here. Thanks to all the panelists for bringing your A game to answer all these wonderful questions. And, of course, to you, the producers, we wouldn't have a show without you if you didn't put in these questions. And, of course, the back-end crew of volunteers that wakes up 7 days a week. It takes a small village to put this show on to make sure everything looks and sounds right. So thank you to the integral work that you do. If we were to have traveled around the world to answer all of these questions according to the Talalak traversal, it would have been, and do we have a traversal? I'm not seeing one here.
It's a bunch of bananas.
Here it is. It's 31,000 miles. That's 50,000 kilometers and 246 million bananas for scale. All right, let's jump into After Hours. See ya.
You know, Alexander, that meter behind your head,
Yes.
I keep thinking I'm looking at a bad Zoom background replacement, the way it wiggles on the side of your head.
Oh, it's definitely real. All this.
No. I get it's real. I understand it's real, but out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, oh, no, it's okay. He's okay. He's good.
And it's moving.
And hit him in the head. Oh, no. Look, cock.
When does your new channel start, Alex?
2 weeks. No,
Is it a channel or a playlist?
No, it'll be a channel.
A whole new YouTube channel.
There'll be different.
Why a new channel?
Because I actually had a conversation with some folks that do SEO for YouTube, and they were like, your channel does too many different things, and there's so much live there, and you're not going to get any movement if you put it all in the same channel. You need to build different sub-channels that let people, when people go to your channel, they need to see what you're talking about, and that's all they need to see, and then they'll subscribe. So the immersive channel is the first one. The teardown is the second one that's going to be out there. And then there's probably a Zoom one waiting in the wings as I figure out how to be productive doing these. The immersive channel I want to get going first. So it'll have 10 videos on it before I do anything else.
The teardown
is really easy because I can do those in real time. Like I just